Diane Calder had been planning this moment for weeks, though she'd told herself 100 times she'd never actually go through with it. At the engagement party, surrounded by string lights and laughter in the garden behind the house her son had inherited, she pulled Emma Voss aside in the kitchen and pressed a folded piece of paper into her hand, along with the corner of an old photograph. Her hands were shaking. She told Emma not to look at it there, just to keep it safe and look when she was alone, and then forced a smile as Mark appeared in the doorway asking about cake. That night, alone in her bathroom, Emma unfolded the paper. It contained a single word, written in shaky handwriting: run. Beneath it was a photograph of a woman in a wedding dress, standing in the same garden where Emma had gotten engaged just hours earlier. On the back, in the same handwriting, was a name and a date: Sarah, 9 years ago. The next morning, Emma asked Mark, carefully, who Sarah was. His reaction told her everything and nothing at once. His expression went flat, his voice turned cold, and he explained that Sarah was his first wife, that she'd left him for someone else 5 years ago, and that his mother still wasn't over it and shouldn't have brought it up. He softened quickly, blaming his mother's confusion, and asked Emma not to let it hang over them so close to the wedding. Emma let it go out loud, but that night she searched online and found almost nothing about Sarah. No social media, no new life, nothing after 5 years. The only trace was an old engagement announcement, dated 9 years ago, with photos taken in the same garden, the same house. Emma realized the photo Diane had given her wasn't from an engagement party at all. It was Sarah and Mark's wedding photo taken in the exact garden where Emma now lived. A few days later, searching a guest room closet for decorations, Emma found a garment bag pushed into the back, undisturbed for years. Inside was a wedding dress, slightly yellowed, almost exactly Emma's size. Tucked into a side pocket was a small velvet box containing 2 wedding rings still together, the way rings are kept after death, not a divorce. Unsettled, Emma met Diane privately and told her what she'd found. Diane broke down, admitting she had never believed Sarah left voluntarily. Sarah had loved that house, loved that garden, and would never have left her rings behind. Diane revealed that there was a garden shed behind the house that Mark had rekeyed 5 years ago, right after Sarah disappeared, and that no one, not even Diane, had been allowed inside it since. Diane also told Emma that Sarah's older sister, Renee, had filed a missing persons report 5 years earlier, only to withdraw it weeks later under circumstances no one in the family ever fully explained. Emma tracked down the detective who'd briefly handled the case, Lena Ferraro, now working cold cases. Ferraro remembered the file. Renee had withdrawn it after claiming Sarah had been in touch and wanted to be left alone, something Ferraro never quite believed. One detail had never been followed up on. The night Sarah disappeared, her phone's last known location pinged from a spot roughly 30 feet behind the main house right where the garden shed stood. Ferraro told Emma that if she could put something concrete in writing, the case could be reopened. That night, with Mark out at a bachelor dinner, Emma and Diane searched the house for the shed key, eventually finding it hidden inside the same velvet box that held the wedding rings. They crossed the dark garden together, unlocked the shed for the first time in 5 years, and stepped inside. The shed was frozen in time, a layer of dust over everything, a packed suitcase sitting in the corner, zipped and ready, as if someone had been about to walk out the door for good and never made it. Emma noticed a loose floorboard, recently disturbed compared to the dust around it, and pried it up to find a small spiral notebook, Sarah's journal. The final entries grew tighter and more frantic with each page. Sarah had written that Mark had discovered she'd been secretly saving money, that she told him she was leaving that night no matter what, and that they were arguing in the shed because he didn't want his mother to hear. The last entry ended mid-sentence. "I'm scared. If anything happens to me." Headlights swept across the shed window. Mark, home early, found Emma and Diane standing over the open floorboard with the journal in Emma's hands. His composure collapsed completely. He admitted it had been an accident, that Sarah had tried to push past him to leave, fallen, and hit her head on the workbench. He panicked, and once he'd told everyone she'd left, he couldn't undo the lie without destroying himself. Every day that passed made it harder to tell the truth. When Diane asked, barely above a whisper, where Sarah was, Mark didn't answer. He simply looked down at the floor of the shed, the same floor Emma was kneeling on. Emma didn't wait for him to say anything else. She and Diane left the shed quickly, crossed the dark garden, and got into Emma's car, where Emma called Detective Ferraro and told her they'd found Sarah. Police arrived within 15 minutes. Mark was still sitting in the shed when they arrived, and he didn't resist. He later gave a full confession that matched almost exactly what he'd told Emma and Diane. Weeks later, Sarah's remains were recovered from beneath the shed floor and returned to her family, allowing Renee to finally bury her sister and learn the truth she'd suspected for years but could never prove. At the small service, Renee found Emma and thanked her for everything she and Diane had done. Emma told her simply that Diane had left the note, she had only followed it. A month after that, Emma helped Diane move into a small apartment of her own, modest, sunlit, completely separate from the house and the life that had quietly controlled them both for years. As they unpacked the last box, Diane pulled out an old framed photo of Sarah, smiling, taken long before any of this began, and said she should have written that note years ago. She'd just been too afraid of what would happen if she did. Emma told her she'd written it when it mattered most, and that doing so had saved them both. In the months that followed, Emma found herself returning again and again to that single word on a folded scrap of paper. Not a warning meant to frighten her away from happiness, but the last, desperate act of a frightened woman trying to save someone else from the fate she herself had never escaped. And this is where our story ends. To enjoy more stories, don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on your notification button. Thanks for watching. Where are you watching from?